The cry in the alley. The city of Caldor 5 never slept. Ships flew overhead. Robots cleaned the streets. Tall alien buildings shined with blinking lights. But in a narrow back alley, far from the glowing roads, something was very wrong. Rain fell, hard. The wind howled through the tight passage between two buildings, and in the middle of the alley a small alien girl sat on the wet ground, crying loudly. "Please, please help my mom." The girl sobbed, her voice shaking. Her small arms were wrapped around a woman's body lying cold and still on the ground. The girl's skin was light purple. Her glowing yellow eyes were wide with fear. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Many people walked by the alley, aliens in fancy coats, guards in black armor, even traders with carts full of goods. But none of them stopped. One alien muttered, "Cursed." Another said, "She's marked. Stay away." The girl cried louder, "Someone, please fix her. She won't stop shaking." Still no one helped, until one man stopped. He wore a long brown coat with old patches and a hood over his head. His boots were muddy. His name was Jackson Ward, a human engineer who had just arrived on the planet to fix old mining machines. He heard the child's voice. He turned his head and saw her, curled up in the rain beside the shaking woman. Jackson stepped into the alley slowly. He bent down beside them. "What happened here?" The girl looked up at him, her eyes full of tears. "You're human. Humans fix things. Please fix my mom." Jackson looked at the woman. She was twitching. Her mouth was open, her eyes rolled back. Foam was coming from the side of her lips. "Is she sick?" Jackson asked. I don't know," the girl said, crying harder. "We were walking. Then she screamed and fell, and she won't stop shaking." Jackson took off his backpack and pulled out a small med scanner. He pressed it to the woman's neck. The scanner blinked red and made a loud beep. Alert. Unknown parasitic activity detected. Host stability. Critical. Jackson's heart dropped. "This is bad." He looked at the girl. "What's your name?" "Miri," she said. "And my mom's name is Lyra." Jackson checked Lyra's pulse. It was weak. Her body felt cold. Her fingers were turning pale. Miri held her mom's hand tighter. "You can help her, right? You have to." "I'll try," Jackson said, already pulling. Out tools, he injected a weak sedative into Lyra's arm. Her body calmed a little, but the scanner still showed red. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. "You shouldn't touch her," said a tall alien standing at the alley's edge. His skin was dark blue. His eyes glowed red. "She's infected." "Infected? With what?" Jackson asked. "No one knows," the alien said. "But she's cursed. Everyone who touches her suffers. Let her go." "She's not cursed," Jackson said. "She's sick and she has a daughter begging for help." The alien shook his head. "That's not your problem, human." Then he turned and walked away. Jackson looked at Miri. "Where do you live?" We were hiding in an old pipe tunnel. We have no home." Jackson sighed. He looked at the cold, shaking woman and at her crying daughter. He thought of the war zones he'd seen, the broken cities, the people no one helped. He stood up and lifted Lyra carefully in his arms. Miri's eyes lit up. "You're taking her?" Jackson nodded. "Yes, but we need to move fast." 15 minutes later, they reached Jackson's small rented workshop. It was a quiet place behind a junkyard. The door creaked open as he entered, carrying Lyra. Miri followed, dripping wet and still shaking. Jackson laid Lyra on the workbench and placed heaters around her. He scanned her again. The parasite had moved deeper, now hiding near her spine. "This is no normal disease," Jackson muttered. "This thing is alive and smart." Miri stood by her mother's side, holding her hand tightly. "Can you fix her?" she asked again, her voice soft now. Jackson looked into the little girl's glowing yellow eyes. He saw fear, but he also saw hope. "I'm going to try," he said. "I won't leave you." Miri smiled a little for the first time. Outside, The rain kept falling, and somewhere in the dark, someone was watching them. The diagnosis: no one wanted inside. The old workshop, the air was quiet, but heavy. The small heaters buzzed as they tried to keep Lyra warm. Miri sat beside her mother, never letting go of her hand. Jackson moved quickly around the room. He pulled down wires, opened old crates, and turned on a large scanner he hadn't used in years. It was dusty and slow, but it still worked. Miri watched him with wide eyes. "Is she getting better?" Jackson paused, then shook his head. "She's not worse, that's something." He connected a cable to Lyra's chest. The scanner blinked. Lights moved across the screen. A few moments passed in silence. Then the screen turned red. Alert, foreign life form detected. Neural invasion in progress. Jackson leaned in. "It's still in her, whatever it is." He zoomed in on the scan. Inside Lyra's spine, a dark shape moved slowly. It looked like a metal root, thin, sharp, and crawling. At the center, a small chip glowed red. Jackson's hands tightened on the table. "This isn't natural." Miri stood up. "What is it?" Jackson didn't want to scare her, but she deserved the truth. There's something inside her nerves. It's not a virus, it's something built, like a machine. Miri blinked. "Someone put it there?" Jackson nodded slowly. "Yes. And it's not just hurting her. It's hiding, like it knows we're trying to stop it." He looked closer at the chip inside the parasite. It had tiny writing on it, almost burned off, but still visible. Project Nexus, ID Lyra 7, status, classified. His stomach dropped. She was part of something. Something secret. Before he could say more, his scanner beeped again. Incoming signal detected. Location trace initiated. What? No. Jackson slammed the scanner shut. He ran to the window and peeked. Out through the blinds. Outside, across the street, 3 figures stood in the shadows. All wore black suits, faces hidden, eyes glowing. They were watching. Jackson turned quickly and grabbed Miri's shoulder. "We have to go, now." Miri's face went pale. "What? Why?" "They found us." He didn't wait. He lifted Lyra gently from the table and placed her on the hover sled. Miri grabbed her coat and followed closely. They exited through the back of the workshop and disappeared into the night. They moved fast through the lower city, using old service tunnels. Pipes leaked steam, lights flickered above them. Rats scattered as they passed. Jackson led them through the maze of underground paths. He had mapped these tunnels when he first arrived. He never thought he'd use them for running. "What's going on?" Miri asked breathlessly. Jackson looked back. "Those people, whoever they are, don't want your mom to be saved. They planted that parasite, and they'll do anything to stop us from finding out why." Miri stayed quiet, holding her mother's hand the whole way. Finally, they reached a rusted steel door. Jackson knocked 3 times. A small camera popped out. A mechanical voice spoke. "State your name." "Jackson Ward." Code word, "Skyburn." The door opened slowly. Inside was a hidden lab, cold, clean, and full of machines. Standing in the center was a tall woman with silver hair and one cybernetic eye. Her name was Dr. Elra. She looked at Jackson, then at the hover sled. "What mess have you brought this time?" Jackson rolled the sled in. "She's infected with something, machine-based. It's inside her spine." Elra scanned Lyra quickly. Her expression changed. "This isn't a normal infection," she said. "This is old tech, military grade." Jackson nodded. "Nexus?" Elra frowned. "That program was shut down 20 years ago." "Well," Jackson said, pointing to the screen, "it's alive and crawling in her nervous system right now." Miri stood in the corner, watching everything. She had no idea what Project Nexus was. She only knew her mother was hurting. She tugged at Elra's coat. "Can you fix her?" Elra paused, then looked at Jackson, then back at Miri. "Maybe," she said slowly. "But if this really is a Nexus implant, then her body is just the surface. The real danger is what comes after, Jackson asked. What do you mean? If someone put this in her. They didn't want her cured, Ailra said. They wanted her erased. Miri's hand gripped her mom's tighter. I won't let that happen, she whispered. Neither would Jackson. Hunted for helping deep inside Dr. Ailra's hidden clinic, the machines beeped quietly. Lyra's body lay still, her skin pale, her pulse barely holding on. The parasite was now silent. But that silence meant danger. It was waiting. Miri stood next to her mother, still holding her hand. Her eyes were tired, but she didn't cry anymore. She had no tears left. Jackson stood at the computer with Dr. Ailra, studying the data. The parasite inside Lyra was not just killing her, it was recording her, watching her every move, sending out signals. Ailra leaned closer to the screen. It's tagged with a location beacon. Jackson's face hardened. You mean it's calling for backup? Ailra nodded. It's telling them exactly where she is, and if they find her again, they won't just try to take her back. This time, they'll erase her for good. Miri looked up. We have to run? Jackson stared at the ceiling, already hearing noises above, the quiet hum of engines, the soft crackle of a surveillance drone. No, he said. We've already run. Now we stay alive. But smart. Suddenly, the security lights blinked, but warning, unauthorized entry detected. Ailra jumped back. They're here. The floor trembled. Dust fell from the vents. Jackson rushed to Lyra's side, pulled the thermal blanket tighter around her, and lifted her into the hover sled. Miri grabbed a med kit and her small bag. Where's the back? Way out? Jackson asked. Ailra opened a wall panel and pointed to a narrow tunnel. It leads to the old transit shafts. You'll have to move fast. I'll cover you. Jackson stared at her. You'll be caught. Ailra smiled weakly. They won't kill me, I know too much, but they'll chase you and she can't afford that. Jackson nodded. There were no better choices left. As Miri and Jackson disappeared into the tunnel, the clinic door exploded behind them. Armed soldiers stormed in, their faces covered, weapons drawn. Ailra stood calmly in the center of the room, arms crossed. You're too late, she said. The patient left 10 minutes ago. The leader of the group stepped forward. His voice was cold. Then you've made yourself an enemy of the government. Ailra grinned. It wouldn't be the first time. Meanwhile, in the transit shafts, Jackson and Miri raced forward. Lyra floated behind them on the hover sled, bumping softly against the walls. The lights above flickered as the old system powered up. Jackson held his scanner tightly, watching for traps. Where are we going? Miri asked, breathless. To the surface, he replied. But not the city. We're going into the outer zones. Miri looked confused. Isn't that dangerous? It's all dangerous now. They stopped near an old maintenance hatch. Jackson climbed up, then reached down and pulled Miri up with one hand, while the sled hovered behind them. The door opened slowly, rusted and stiff. They emerged in the ruins of an old transport yard. Broken ships, scrapped machines. No people, no lights. Jackson closed the hatch behind them. We'll hide here for a few hours, then move again. He helped Miri set Lyra down behind an old shuttle and wrapped her in blankets. Miri touched her mother's face gently. She's so cold. Jackson checked her pulse again. Weak, but still alive. He looked out at the silent yard. And then he said, We can't just keep running. She needs the cure. Miri stood up. Where is it? Jackson took a deep breath. There's a place, a vault, the Rexon Core, military base, locked by law, guarded by machines and death traps. Miri nodded. Then we go there. Jackson blinked. You're serious? She looked at him fierce now. She's my mom. I'll do anything. He smiled, but it faded quickly. It won't be easy. We'll need a plan. And if we get caught, then we don't get caught, Miri said. That night, they sat around a small fire built from broken circuit boards and wire bundles. Jackson took out a piece of paper and drew a rough map of the vault. "There's a back door here," he said. "An old tunnel I once repaired during my work days. If it's still open, we can sneak in. The serum should be stored in a cryo case, marked red." Miri nodded, committing every word to memory. Jackson looked at her and said quietly, "You've been brave." She replied, "You didn't walk away when I cried in the alley. I won't walk away now." And in that moment, Jackson saw it. Not just a scared kid, but someone stronger than most warriors he'd ever known. A child, facing a galaxy that wanted her mother dead, and refusing to give up. The parasite was planted. The sun never rose in Sector. Black. The sky over the junkyard remained gray and dusty, always choking on old fumes. But deep inside the wreck of an abandoned freighter, Jackson worked silently. A broken table had become a lab. A crate became a bed. Miri's mother, Lyra, lay still under heat blankets. Every few minutes her fingers twitched, just enough to remind them the parasite was still there. Jackson adjusted the med scanner, wiped off the dust, and stared at the readings for the 100th time. The parasite hadn't moved much. It didn't need to. It had already won, unless they stopped it. Miri sat nearby, cleaning blood from her mother's fingers with a soft cloth. She didn't speak. She hadn't asked for updates. She just stayed close. Jackson finally spoke. "I found something." Miri looked up quickly. He turned the scanner toward her and zoomed into the image of the parasite. "It's more than a parasite." "What is it?" Miri asked. Jackson touched the red center, something hidden inside the roots. "This part here, it's not alive, it's a control chip." "A chip?" He nodded. "Someone planted this. On purpose." Miri's lips trembled. "Why would anyone do that?" Jackson didn't answer at first. He picked up a signal reader, ran it over Lyra's neck, and found a strange magnetic pulse. He adjusted the signal, and a code flashed across the reader. Subject: Lyra 7 Project Nexus expunged. 16 years ago. Class experimental host. Jackson froze. His hand trembled. "No," he whispered. He grabbed an old data drive from his bag. He had copied government files from the scanner before they left Aelra's clinic. He opened one file, locked under black level access. Inside were old photographs, documents, and names. Subjects in steel chairs, faces twisted in pain, devices drilled into their spines. At the top of one photo was a name. Lyra 7. Miri leaned in. "That's her?" Jackson nodded slowly. She was a test subject, in a program that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Miri's face turned pale. "My mom never told me. She probably thought it was over, that she escaped." He looked at her, eyes heavy. "They put this thing in her back years ago. It stayed quiet, waiting." Miri gasped. "You mean it was inside her all this time?" "Yes," Jackson said. "Waiting for one command to activate. A kill command. And now it's running." Outside, wind howled through broken ship parts. Somewhere in the dark, something watched. Them. Miri stood up. "You said there's a cure? In the vault?" Jackson pulled out the rough map. "Yes, a special serum that shuts down neural implants. It was made just in case something went wrong with their test subjects." Miri asked, "But they shut the project down, right?" Jackson looked at her carefully. "They said they shut it down. But if Lyra was still being tracked, someone's keeping the project alive in secret." Miri clenched her fists. "Then we need to stop them, not just save my mom." Jackson smiled sadly. "You talk like a soldier." She shook her head. "I talk like a daughter." That night, Jackson rebuilt his old stealth gear. Black clothes, a cloaking patch, EMP wires. Miri helped tighten the straps. She knew every step mattered now. "You sure about this?" he asked her. "Yes." "You're not scared?" Miri nodded honestly. I am. But I'm more scared of doing nothing. Jackson stared at her. This little alien girl who had cried in an alley just days ago and now stood like a warrior ready for war. As they prepared to leave, Miri turned to her sleeping mother. She held Lyra's hand tightly and whispered, "I'm going to fix you, even if the whole galaxy tries to stop me." Then she kissed her forehead and turned to follow Jackson into the dark. Meanwhile, in a cold command room far across the city, a figure watched security footage on a giant screen. Jackson's face. Mirai's face. Lyra on the hover sled. The figure leaned forward and pressed a button. "Activate tracking units," he said. "The human stole Nexus data. The child knows too much. The host must be terminated." A guard saluted. "Shall we kill them all?" "No," the figure said with a smirk. "Let the parasite finish its work, but if they reach the vault, destroy it." Back in the ruins, Jackson and Miri reached the edge of the old city wall. Beyond it was the vault. Beyond it, the truth. And the only cure that could stop the parasite from turning Lyra into a corpse. They didn't speak. They just walked, forward side by side, not as man and child, but as warriors on a mission the galaxy had already tried to bury. The humans' break in the sky above Zone Rexon was a sick shade of red. Dust storms rolled over the plains like waves. In the distance stood the Rexon core vault, half buried in rock, shaped like a giant fist slammed into the ground. It didn't have walls. It was a wall. No doors. No windows. Just a black surface that hummed like it was alive. Jackson and Miri lay on their stomachs behind a rusted shipping drone watching. "That's it," Jackson whispered. "That's where they keep the serum." Miri squinted. "Where's the way in?" Jackson pointed to a piece of rock sticking out. "See that crack? There's a hidden pipe under it. I used it years ago to fix coolant systems. If it's still open, we can slip inside." "Then let's go," Miri said. Jackson looked at her. "From here on, we're ghosts. No talking, no lights, no mistakes." Miri nodded. She didn't act like a child anymore. She hadn't for a while. They moved fast, sliding through dust, ducking behind metal beams, dodging motion sensors. When they reached the crack, Jackson pulled out a laser knife and cut open a rusted panel. The smell hit them instantly, old oil and heat. The tunnel inside was narrow and dark. They crawled inside, one after the other. Minutes passed. The tunnel was hot, tight. Breathing was hard. Miri didn't complain. When they reached the inner shaft, Jackson activated a small EMP pulse. It fried the security grid for exactly 9 seconds. "Go," he whispered. They dropped into the vault. Inside, it was silent. Too silent. Black walls surrounded them. Holographic lights moved like shadows. Jackson scanned the area. The storage chamber was just ahead, marked with red lights. "There it is," he whispered. But as he stepped forward, something clicked. A red dot blinked on the wall. Oh no. A hidden turret dropped from the ceiling. Jackson grabbed Miri and rolled behind a pillar as the turret fired. Za, za, za. Blasts hit the wall above them. "I thought you said no mistakes," Miri whispered. "I planned for mistakes," he replied, pulling a shock grenade from his belt. He tossed it. Boom. The lights blinked. The turret sparked, then died. They rushed forward. The storage chamber glowed cold. Inside were rows of sealed drawers, each one labeled with strange codes. Jackson searched fast. Miri helped, reading numbers out loud. Finally, she pointed. "That 1, Serum 7, Neural Parasite, Shutdown. Injector classified. Do not use without authorization." Jackson broke the seal and pulled the vial out. It glowed faint blue. But just as he turned, alarm, intruder detected, lockdown in 30 seconds, red. Lights flashed, walls began to close. "Time to run," Jackson shouted. They ran through the corridor, dodging rising spikes, jumping over floor traps. Jackson threw Miri over a closing door and rolled under it a second later. They made it to the pipe. But as they started crawling, they heard metal clanking behind them, A drone sentinel. It was crawling after them, spider-like, sharp, fast. "Go, Miri!" Jackson shouted. "Don't look back!" She crawled faster. Jackson turned and fired his pulse pistol. The drone dodged and slashed his arm. He kicked it and dropped a microbomb behind him. Boom! Dust filled the pipe. They tumbled out the other end, coughing. Jackson's arm was bleeding, but the serum was safe. Miri held it tightly in her hands. "We got it," she said, breathless. Jackson nodded. "Now we save her." Back in the junkyard, Lyra's body was barely moving. She was burning with fever. Her lips had turned blue. Jackson injected the serum into her spine carefully. Seconds passed. Miri held her breath. Then, Lyra's body jolted. The parasite screamed inside her, twisting under the skin. Dark lines crawled up her neck. Her eyes rolled back, and then, silence. The dark lines faded. Her body stopped shaking. Lyra breathed softly, then her eyes opened. "Miri?" she whispered. The little girl sobbed and jumped into her mother's arms. "You're back!" Lyra hugged her weakly, confused. What happened?" Jackson knelt beside them. "You were marked for death," he said. "But your daughter wouldn't let you go." Lyra looked at Miri. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You saved me?" Miri smiled through her tears. "I had help." Outside the junkyard, a black drone hovered quietly, watching them. It sent one message back to its command center. Subject Lyra 7 recovered. Parasite neutralized. Human interference confirmed. The reply came instantly. Initiate full cover-up. Silence. Them all. But Jackson wasn't afraid anymore. He had the serum. He had the data chip, and most important, he had the truth. And now, the whole galaxy was going to hear it. The cure and the comeback, the morning sky over the outer wastelands, was quiet. Jackson stood outside the broken freighter, watching the sunlight rise through a cloud of dust. He hadn't slept. His arm was still bandaged from the drone's attack, but he didn't care. Inside, something better than rest was happening. Lyra was alive. Miri sat on the edge of the bed, holding her mother's hand. Lyra's eyes were open now. Her skin, once cold and pale, had color again. The parasite was gone. The scanner showed nothing red, nothing crawling, just a heartbeat. A slow, steady heartbeat. Lyra looked at her daughter and brushed her hand gently across Miri's cheek. "I dreamed you were crying in the rain." Miri nodded, smiling, through tears. "I was, but someone stopped. He helped us." Lyra's eyes turned to the man leaning in the doorway. "Human," she whispered. Jackson stepped in. Jackson Ward, engineer. Also part-time fugitive, apparently. Lyra smiled weakly. "Why did you help us?" He sat down beside the bed and shrugged. "Couldn't walk away from a little girl screaming in the dark." Lyra looked at Miri, then back at Jackson. "Thank you for saving my child's world." Jackson smiled. "She saved yours first." Later, over a small fire, Lyra sipped hot broth while Jackson showed her the data chip taken from the parasite. Files scrolled across the screen. Her name, test subject number, experiment logs. Lyra closed her eyes as it all returned. "They told me I was cured," she said. "After I escaped, I hid, raised Miri in quiet places. I thought I left that life behind." Jackson shook his head. "They never stopped watching. That chip in your spine wasn't just for pain. It was a tracking device, a sleeper weapon." Lyra held Miri close. "They were waiting to finish the job. And now they know you survived," Jackson said, "which means we need to move fast." That night, they left the junkyard and traveled through empty towns and broken roads. Every drone in the sky could be a hunter. Every shadow could be a spy. But Jackson had a plan, and now he had a voice. They reached the edge of Vereen Broadcast Tower, a once-abandoned station used to send signals across nearby systems. Jackson hot-wired the controls, powered up the dish, and loaded the Nexus files into the transmission core. Are you sure? Lyra asked. They tried to bury this, Jackson said. Let's dig it back up. When the signal hit the stars, everything changed. Screens across markets, stations, and homes flashed. Project Nexus exposed. Secret bioweapons found in living host. Human engineer risks life to save alien mother and daughter. Child's cry leads to discovery of galactic crime. The news spread like fire. Miri's photo, wet, scared, holding her mother's hand, became a symbol across the stars. They called her the little voice that broke the silence. But the signal also brought danger. Back at command control, a high officer slammed his fist on the table. They exposed us, and that human, that child, made us look weak. A soldier asked, "Should we launch an erasure strike?" "No," the officer growled. "Send the silencers, and make sure the child never speaks again." Back in a secret safe house, Lyra sat in a warm room holding her daughter close. Jackson cleaned his gear in the corner, eyes on the door. "You know they'll come for us," Lyra said. Jackson nodded, but this time the galaxy's watching. Outside, something unexpected happened. People began to show up. An old merchant brought food. A young alien nurse offered medical supplies. A group of students handed Miri hand-drawn signs that read, "Your tears woke us up. We hear you now." The streets filled with those who no longer believed the lies. A single act of kindness, Jackson's choice to stop in that alley, had shaken the system, and Miri's voice had turned that kindness into a movement. As night fell, Jackson looked out at the growing crowd. He turned to Miri and smiled. "You ready to keep going?" She smiled back. "We're just getting started." The child who taught them all. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was never meant for children. It was a place of laws and leaders, of silence and judgment. But today, the galaxy watched as a little alien girl stood in the center, with a steady gaze and a tiny voice that refused to shake. Her name was Miri. Her mother Lyra stood behind her, weak but alive. And next to them stood Jackson Ward, the human who changed everything. Around them sat hundreds of officials, leaders from 100 worlds. They whispered. They watched. Some judged. Others felt shame. Miri looked up. So many eyes stared at her. She swallowed her fear, and then she spoke. "My mom was dying," she began. "In the rain, on the ground. She was shaking and cold. I screamed for help." She paused. No one stopped. The chamber went silent. Miri looked at Jackson. "Except him," she pointed. "He was human, he didn't know us, but he stopped, he tried, he cared." Gasps echoed. Miri took a breath. She had something inside her. A parasite. But it wasn't from nature. It was made, built, put inside her on purpose by Project Nexus. They said the program was dead. They lied. Counselors shifted in their seats. She was a test subject, then a mother, then a target. Miri's voice cracked. But she didn't stop. They wanted her gone. Forever. But I wouldn't let go. And he didn't either. She turned to the council. "Why do you call people cursed when they need help?" No one answered. Behind the council walls, screens across planets broadcast the speech. Crowds watched in silence. On mining colonies, spaceports, farming moons, everywhere, beings stopped what they were doing. They listened to the small voice that carried the weight of truth. Counselor Drix, a gray-skinned elder, leaned forward. "Child, you speak with fire, but do you know the danger you've caused?" Jackson stepped forward calmly. She didn't cause danger. She uncovered it. He placed the data chip on the council table. All the records, the scans. The chip, inside her back, you can see it all. Another counselor spoke, voice soft. "And what do you want, Mr. Ward?" Jackson looked at Miri and Lyra, then back to the room. Justice, protection, and a future where no child has to beg strangers to fix their mom while the world turns away. Silence, then whispers, then votes. After hours, the lead counselor stood. We have made our judgment. He raised his hand. Project Nexus is hereby declared a violation of galactic law. All involved members are to be tried. Compensation will be paid to surviving victims. He turned to Lyra. You are cleared of all marks. You are no longer cursed. You are free. Then, to Jackson. For your actions beyond duty, we grant you full status, galactic citizenship, and protection. Your actions remind us of what we forget. One hand can still save a life. And finally, to Miri. For your courage, your voice, and your unshaken love, you have taught the stars something we lost. He bowed his head. To a child who taught us all. The hall stood and applauded. Miri stared, unsure. Jackson knelt down beside her. That's for you, kid. Days passed. News spread across systems, posters. Went up, murals were painted. A statue was built outside the council hall. A little girl holding a shaking hand in the rain. At the base, a message read, one cry, one human, one chance, never look away again. But Miri didn't care for statues. She just wanted a quiet place to be with her mom. So they left. 3 months later, planet Elevon, a small green world, gentle rivers, windy hills, and in the middle, a quiet house built of wood and stone. Sign outside read, Hope House, free care for all. Inside, Lyra worked as a healer. Jackson fixed machines, and Miri ran around with young alien children, laughing, playing, and telling stories of the alley, the vault, and the break-in no one believed was real. Some kids didn't believe her, so she showed them the old scarf, still stained with soot and burn marks. They believed her after that. One day, a knock came at the door. A woman stood there with a baby. Her eyes were full of fear. They said you help without asking questions. Lyra took the baby in her arms. You heard right, she smiled. Come inside. A week later, Miri sat on a hill watching the stars rise. Jackson sat beside her, chewing on an old snack bar. You think they're still out there? She asked. The bad ones? Yeah, Jackson nodded. Maybe, but now they know we don't scare easy. Miri smiled. Good. They should be scared. He laughed. You're tougher than most adults. She leaned back on the grass. You still remember the alley? Every night. She looked at him. Do you wish you'd walked past? He turned to her, serious. Not for a second. Back on Earth, a school hung a small picture in its library. A tiny alien girl in the rain. A man kneeling beside her. Beneath it, the message said, don't ignore the one calling for help. You might be their only lifeline. Years later, Miri would grow up to lead a new alliance, one that tracked and shut down secret projects like Nexus. She became known as the voice of the forgotten, but in her heart, she was always the girl from the alley and the man who stopped. For her, he never left. Together, they changed the galaxy, not with power, not with war, but with something stronger. Compassion.